those of us that are seated around this group this evening are in our 50s and 60s. And at the retreat, we also had participants in their 30s and 40s. Yes, and the predominance being 50s and 60s, but we did have one young lady who had just graduated from college. She was in her early 20s, and she received tremendous benefit at the retreat and had tremendous input into the retreat that we all learned from. But along that line, what is the significance of Amanaska Yoga in terms of helping our youth and the young adults to be able to grow spiritually and emotionally into their future in light of the fact that their days are now spent seeking something outward in the busyness, the distractions of life, and so forth?
This seems to be socially extremely relevant, this question. And we have children and we have grandchildren, and the younger generation may have only children. And 4 years ago I was speaking in Toronto, and I was speaking to a small group of very good seekers, just like the seekers who gathered for the retreat. A young friend of mine had arranged that meeting, and then there was a genuine seeker, and he stood up at the end of the talk and he posed an extremely pertinent question. When he saw the 4 goals of life, the diagram of the 4 goals of life in traditional Hindu society, contrasted with the goals of life in modern secular society, where the balance between the material and the spiritual has been upset, has been destabilized, then he said, what is the hope for our children? How do we save our children? Very poignant question it was for him. And because he had children, and because he knew that our children don't have something which we may have more of. And so I feel that if parents have this exposure to Amanaska Yoga, and they take it upon themselves to make this a lifetime pursuit, because it's a sensible thing to do, but self-knowing is the biggest jewel you can have in the spiritual life, then their children may be fortunate, because parents are the best teachers, not the teachers in schools and colleges, because they teach by example. They may not even teach verbally. They may not take a book and say, now you study this, you study that, this is the meaning, that is the meaning, but you learn from the acts of your parents. By the way your parents live life unselfishly. By small acts which show that in their worldview, you were more important as their offspring than they themselves. For example, there were only 2 fruits in the home. And then the parent says, then the child says, no dad, you take it. And the father says, no, you are a growing child, you take it. Now a child is a witness to this. And now that's a lesson which has been given. Very precious lesson. And so then you see your parents being honest when they could have been dishonest. Now, therefore, parents are the greatest teachers. And so once parents imbibe this and know the value of it, I think it's their moral obligation not only to share it with their friends and their kith and kin who trust them, but more importantly their children. And as we saw in Rohini's case, she came because of a thundering misfortune in life, and for which there was not sufficient solace. And therefore they have to recover from that misfortune to live life normally, and to be able to go normally on the road of life. And if they don't go through this process, then it may always be a nagging thing at the back of their minds, on and off, the trauma pulling them back. And so I feel that it should come from the parents ideally, But if it's not coming from the parents, then it should come from society, which stretches out a helping hand, like let's say Lamar or Don. They go to a school somewhere in the neighborhood, and they're asked to give a talk, or Kumar is asked to give a talk under the auspice of Panchas Yoga. So then he may choose to speak on the importance of self-knowing, and that's how you will do the world a service, by making use of the power that comes into your hands. Use it wisely, use it for the benefit of all. So that's how it has to go.